Ready? Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody here for our annual Child Abuse Prevention Month. Sort of a kickoff we have here in Chautauqua County where we plant our pinwheels in front of the facility here that's occupied by our family court and also by Office of Mental Hygiene and Social Services, who works directly with many of our children and youth. I'm County Executive P.J. Wendell. I'd like to welcome everybody, and I'm going to start out with a proclamation from my office. Whereas at least 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse or neglect in the past year in the United States, and whereas in federal fiscal year of 2021, an estimated 600,000 children across the United States were found to be victims of child abuse. And whereas neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and trafficking of children have no place in our communities, and these serious problems can have a long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effect on these young victims who are unable to defend themselves. And whereas we must support the healthy development of our children by surrounding them with a loving, supporting environment that promotes their social, emotional, and developmental well-being so our children can grow into caring, successful adults in our communities. Whereas effective child abuse prevention programming succeeds because of the meaningful partnerships created among child welfare, education, health, and community faith-based organizations, businesses, and law enforcement agencies. And whereas we acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase the awareness about child abuse and neglect and to promote programs and activities that benefit the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. And whereas court-appointed special advocates of Chautauqua County Incorporated have teamed up with the government and community partners to participate in the Pinwheels for Prevention campaign, which raises awareness about childhood abuse prevention and each child's entitlement to a great childhood. Now, therefore, I, Paul M. Wendell, Jr., Chautauqua County Executive, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2024 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Chautauqua County and urge all of its citizens to recognize this month by dedicating ourselves to the important task of improving the quality of life for all children and families. In witness whereof, I have hereto set my hand and affixed the seal of the great county of Chautauqua on this day, April 11th, 2024, signed myself. As a former educator for 25 years, I could tell you one of the things we often noticed were those children of neglect and child abuse. And unfortunately, this is a problem that we are always going to be battling, but making sure that our children are aware, making sure that residents are aware what to look for and how to protect those children is the most important piece. So on behalf of myself and the residents, we are committed to protecting the youth of this community and this county. They are our future, and I'd like to thank everyone here because you all play an integral part of the protection and safety of these children in our county. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to our District Attorney, Jason Schmidt.
Thank you, PJ. I just want to say to everybody that it is really an honor to be in this role, to be here today, because when we talk about prevention and we talk about awareness, we're really talking about two different areas, right? We have to deal with reporting the abuse when we see it. And then we have to deal with deterrence. We have to deal with holding people accountable when they harm a child. The dirty little secret that every bad person knows, and that many of us here who work with children every day know, is that children don't necessarily report when they're being abused, whether they're victims of child sexual assaults or some other form of neglect or abuse. Generally speaking, it's with an intimate partner or someone, or maybe a family member. It's oftentimes the breadwinner of the family, and so they have little incentive to go forward and to tell on that person, because what is it going to result in? Homelessness. It's going to result in family court actions. It's going to result in counseling and medical appointments. There's so much riding against a child saying anything, and as a result, they generally keep silent. And that means it's up to us in the community. If you see something, you need to say something. If you don't say something, we can't do anything about it. Most of the times in the DA's office, we're dealing with sexual assault cases that are reported years after they actually occurred. So what does that mean? That means there's no medical evidence, there's no corroboration as to what occurred. All we have to ride or die with is this poor child's statement. It's very hard to get a conviction. It's very hard to hold people accountable when that's all we have. So what do? We have to enlist the community. We have to enlist mandated reporters. But even beyond our legal obligations, we have a moral obligation. If we see something, to say something. If you see some suspicious activity, certainly say something. But beyond that, if you see a change in a child, that's something I've learned over the past 3 years in this position, is that it's not obvious. Sometimes it's very nuanced. You know, the child suddenly starts dressing heavier in clothing, or retreating into a bedroom, stops socializing, you know, no longer listening to music anymore, no longer communicating, you know, and sometimes we just attribute that to just the maturation process that children go through. They stop communicating. But no, a lot of times that's indicative that something has happened to this child. They're not talking about it, but we as adults need to recognize this, and at the very least, say something. Who do you say something to? Well, if you're a mandated reporter, you know what your obligations are. You need to report that to the state central registry. We need to get CPS involved in that right away, so that we can, see whether we can develop the evidence, so that we can either first of all, in the first instance, put that child into a safe environment, and then secondly, hold the bad person accountable. If you see something, say something. Most times we have very little to go on, and the earliest that we can get involved in this, it really just improves our success rate. So with that, I just want to thank everybody who's here. I am so rewarded. I'm so honored that I get to work with each and every one of you. You guys are the child advocates. You guys are out there in the front lines dealing with this every single day in the family court system. In CPS, our caseworkers. I can't say anything, about caseworkers. I used to be a caseworker myself. If it wasn't for the caseworkers, where would our children be? We really need to siphon that up. We need to work together, our CPS our social services attorneys, with the caseworkers, with our child advocacy program, all of us together, the partners working together, communicating together. That's what this is about. But not just as a local legal community, not just as a county, the county system, but as a community, just as neighbors, as people, as parents, as brothers, sisters, as children ourselves. If you see something, say something. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, PJ. With that, Judge Piazza, our family court judge, who's practiced in this area of child advocacy for so long, I'm proud to have him come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Well, we're here again for Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. Unfortunately, we have to do this every year. It's something as a community we have to address, but the first step is to be aware. And it's so easy to go through our day-to-day lives and not be aware of it. All of us here that are involved, every day we are aware of it. So I'm going to be very brief. As a community, we need to be aware of it. We need to support children, and we need to continuously be on the lookout. We need to be vigilant, and anything we can do to continue to raise awareness is something that would be very positive to our community and especially for our children. Thank you. Judge Sullivan.
Thank you, Judge Piazza. Thanks for everyone for being here. The issue is so important, and the things that you're able to observe and make calls about and to bring about the awareness to protect children is so important. But there are so many things we don't even catch that are happening to these children today. During one appearance today, we got into a long discussion about CPR. We're raising a generation of children who've had to try to save their parents. You talk about abuse. The child has to do CPR. I don't know if any of you have done CPR. Even when you don't know the person, you don't forget CPR having done it. You don't forget the cases when you've done it. And if it's your own parent, that's why it's so important to identify the problems, whether it's the traditional abuse we all think about of somebody being struck and harmed or sexually abused. We're now looking at the abuse that takes place emotionally, and we really have to have more people aware of that as a risk so that those calls can be made and we can step in early for those children. In that regard, and after we've got the case in front of us, we're very fortunate in our county to have a very active court-appointed special advocacy program. There was a time not so long ago that we had more cases than we could possibly get volunteers to cover. But through the hard work of the team now, and Kathy Park, who will be speaking right now after me, we are at a point where if we have a child that needs an advocate, we've got a person available. And that's taken a long time and a lot of hard work. So I do want to commend them, particularly, not just while we're bringing awareness, but to the efforts of people that are working to help once that awareness is made and we have the cases to help these children in their time of need. So thank you, Kathy, and you're next.
A little shorter. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We've been doing this now for 20 years. I can remember our first pinwheel planting. It was over on that hill. It was a little dangerous for those of you that can remember. But it's what it is supposed to represent. When you look at a pinwheel, I want you to think of a child and a happy place for that child to go. That child is not going to get to that happy place unless we all come together as a team. And we're very fortunate in Chautauqua County. Our department is amazing. Our caseworkers to work with, our family court judges are incredible. Everybody is in it for the same. Our partners, we all work together to make sure that these kids, when you see a pinwheel, you're going to ask yourself, okay, how do we uplift? How do we impact that family? Whether it's a smile, whether it's reaching out, whether it's stepping in and making that call. It's all up to each and every one of us here to do that, and the only way that is going to change is if we all continue to work together. So on behalf of our program and our volunteers who are out on the front lines seeing a whole lot of stuff, think of the pinwheel as a happy thing when it comes to a child. So do your part. See a pinwheel, reach out, whether it's lending a smile to someone in the grocery store that may be yelling at their kid, whatever they do. Just offer a kind smile, a kind word, and do what you can to help. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Spielman from the CAPS program, Child Advocacy Program. Emily?
At the Child Advocacy Program, our mission is to end child abuse in Chautauqua County. When abuse does occur, CAP coordinates a community response to provide healing, hope, and justice to children and their families. We know this is a very large mission that can be difficult to achieve sometimes. And that's why it's imperative that we collaborate with our multidisciplinary team, otherwise known as our MDT, alongside with our staff at CAP. This process is a reactionary response to child abuse to provide healing, hope, and justice through therapy, advocacy, law enforcement and/or child protective services actions, and connections to other community agencies to counteract the effects of these horrendous acts that can sometimes last into adulthood. But the truth is, it is our job as adults. It is our job as community members, and it is our job as citizens of Chautauqua County to take a proactive approach in protecting our children. I encourage you today, throughout the rest of this month, and hopefully throughout the rest of our lives, to step up and speak out when we recognize boundaries being crossed with our children, when we notice a change in behavior, when we notice a story doesn't quite add up, when we notice a child cannot stay awake during school or is suddenly no longer interested in things they once were. This can seem like a big task, but please know you are not alone. We are here for you at the Child Advocacy Program to provide support and to provide education on how to best protect our children. I encourage you to take the steps now, to be proactive, to get trained so that you can help us reduce the reactionary steps we must take after abuse occurs. It is never a child's job to protect children. It is ours. And at this time, I invite you to plant our pinwheels right in between these steps. And please scan the QR code on any of the lawn signs that you see. It does take you to a poster with information of awareness on child abuse, as well as some resources you can access and your next steps. Thank you all so much for being here.